Hello, my friends. Randy Saleh, Assistant Professor of Business. We're going to finish up the marketing environment with this last lecture video, Marketing Information, Market Research. And as we go over this last PowerPoint, put it in there. This is changing by the day, market research, but this is some good careers for you. If you're getting into marketing and you say, what could I do in the career of marketing? What job would I have? Well, there's a lot. And of course, we think of sales, we think of advertising, we think of social media, we think of retail, think of all sorts of stuff. But market research is a very good one. And so let's dive into this one right now and look at what you could do and why we need it. Consumer needs. Are you changing? Let me ask you a question. Are you purchasing the same type of products that you purchased 5 years ago, 10 years ago? Now, for some of this class, I'm going to assume you may have still been in some sort of secondary education 5 to 10 years ago, maybe high school, junior high, or younger. And some of us, others who are out of that, maybe in a different phase of our life. Maybe we had young children, and maybe now the children are getting older and moving out of the home. Well, they're never going to move out of the home, but at least they're self-sufficient. So we tend to buy different things. That's why we always have to have our pulse on the market. And again, the SWOT analysis, the situation analysis, those were forms of research right there. And so we've got to understand the motives, and they are difficult to determine, so we want to analyze this, put some numbers to it. Kodak. I've spoken of Kodak before. Let's look at this amazing company. If I were to say what Kodak was in today's world, I'd probably say Kodak was Tesla of their time. And they invested billions of dollars in research. That's why I'm putting it in this PowerPoint right here. Billions and billions of research. They were founded on disruptive technology, innovations that people didn't see coming. George Eastman actually bought the company in the late 1800s. And you'll see some different things out there on the internet, but it was close to several $100,000 is what he bought the process that Kodak was made from. It was the first film photography, quick film photography. Basically, before that, if you look at the old movies of the 1800s or old pictures, those were electric static on glass and metal plates. And so photography there was definitely an art form. You don't see a lot of pictures. It was very expensive. But George Eastman found out a way that he could bring photography to the masses. Now, fast forward several hundred years, let's look what a disruptive technology was. And that was disruptive because now, in the 1800s, Eastman was putting a camera in everyone's pocket for a very low cost, but he was making tremendous amounts of money off the film. But photography was now catching on. Now, disruptive means this. It changes the product or market. Different users come in. Maybe the price lowers, but it continues to change the product. Now, this was back in the day. There's the old Kodak I guess you would call it the old Instamatic. I think that's what it was called. Yep, there it is, Instamatic. And all of our little flash bulbs right there. And for decades, this was the standard in photography, at least for home photography. If you were just an amateur, Thanksgiving and Christmas, you have that little camera out there. You got blinded every time this little bulb went off, but it was great. Then, for decades and decades, and now in the basically late 90s, very late 90s, early aughts, the digital camera came out, kind of disrupted this to nothing. Then, of course, your iPhone today is the number one camera in the world, or your Samsung. And interesting, traditional photography to digital to all of a sudden when your 9-year-old brother or sister or niece or nephew is doing all the photography in the house. Very disruptive, isn't it? There's the Kodak Corporation. I don't know if anyone can remember the good old Kodak film where you basically had one in every single shopping center. You could get one-day photo. Well, that was pretty amazing, because if you've taken a film photography class, developing the film is not the easiest thing in the world, but you can get some amazing results. Photomat, that's what these were. They were everywhere. Bring it in early, buy your film, and at the end of the day, you had your pictures. So, 1888, formed in Rochester, New York, George Eastman. How did it become Kodak, the name? George and his mother went to an English writer, so that would have been your social media coordinator in the day, and said, give me a name, okay? I want it easy to pronounce, I want it strong, and my favorite letter is K. So what can you do for me? The person, thought about it for a while, and a week later he came up with the name Kodak, and George said, that's exactly what I want. Here's your money, it now belongs to me. Hence, the Kodak Corporation was formed. That's where the name comes. A very powerful name. We're looking at didactics there. Photography to the masses. Did you realize that Kodak had invented the digital camera? They were the first company to do so. 1975. Some of their engineers, again, they put so much money into their research and engineering. Kodak had more patents than any company in the world, and certainly in the United States. And so, in a lab, they printed out a 1 megapixel picture. Took about an hour in 1975. And they kind of looked back at each other. They had some film executives there, and they had the tech executives, and they all stared at each other saying, this could change everything. And the film people said, we don't necessarily like that, because we make money not on the camera at Kodak, we make money on the film. And friends, they made a ton of money on that film. So it got put to the back burner, and it got shoved back there. And of course, a lot of company infighting in the next 20 years, whether we should go more to technology photography or keep traditional photography. I think you're figuring out what happened to the rest of that. To the year 1997. All right. This company was always in the top Fortune 50 from the year 1800 so for over 110 years. They employed 146,000 people. And friends, those were full-time jobs with benefits and retirement and good salaries. This was a great organization to work for. They had a almost 90% market share of film in the United States. Now that basically says you own your entire market. Their profit margins were over 80%, sometimes hitting 90%. So let's say this, every dollar of sales you have, and you have an 85-cent profit margin, you'd have to be doing something illegal today to get that. Even if you could get that, that is crazy amounts of money. So maybe you can see why an older generation didn't want to change the boat, didn't want to rock that boat, because they were tremendously profitable. But what they did when they benched, so to speak, put the digital camera on the bench, they lost the upper hand of making it better and figuring out different business models for it. From 1900 to 1998, 80% of every picture in the world was taken on Kodak film. These are two of what Time magazine calls the most influential pictures. That's Neil Armstrong, that's Man on the Moon. And this was a young Arabian girl. It was called The Women of Arabia, and I believe that was in the early 1980s. Her eyes popped out so dramatically that if you were alive in that time, everybody remembers that picture. That was a cover of National Geographic. Every Academy Award winning movie until the year 2007 was on Kodak cinematography. The company owned their market for 115 years. Huge part of just world culture. Employed hundreds of thousands of people, okay, and had an extensive multiplier effect. So for every Kodak job, just imagine, they were the number one users of silver in the world all the way until the company went bankrupt a few years ago because of the silver metallic processes in film development. They're in the 90s. Ugh. A lot of change happening in the 90s, my friend. That's, if you got to pinpoint where did everything start really ramping up into globalization, well, we opened Chinese relations in the 90s, And of course, that meant we just went into a global economy, at least laying down all the foundation. During the 90s, Kodak, sometimes you just get so big and you're so flush with profits, you forget. Fujifilm, if we have some photographers in the class, Fujifilm's excellent film. And they were starting to really cut into Kodak's market. 4-pack of film was $8. Kodak was $4 a roll. Now, it was an excellent film, but so was Fuji. Professional photographers use both, and they get more for their money with Fujifilm. So they created hundreds of intellectual projects and properties. That's kind of what kept what's keeping Kodak today, because they've been selling them off. And Fujifilm said, let's create value for our customers. They quickly took 40% of the film market. So they're losing film market share. And Canon and Nikon and Sony are really ramping out all sorts of digital cameras. And Kodak, as the 90s progressed, just sat there and said, what is happening to us? We're losing everything. So in the late 1990s, and again, during the early 90s, that's when the biggest power shift happened in Kodak. And I'm saying all this because you can learn what happened and what not to happen to the organizations you run and you're going to work for. The power shift came from tech program to the film division, and the next president came from one of those blocks. And the film division got the next president, and the leader of the tech division went to Sun Microsystems, and so they lost tremendous amounts of talent. 20 years, the company realized that they've got to get back in the digital game. They should have been pioneering this. They should have owned it. They didn't. And of course, these three companies, Canon, Nikon, Sony, were years ahead of research. So here's what Kodak did with Nikon. They took the Nikon F5, which is possibly the best film camera in production, professional, and they put Kodak on there. And they made it digital, and they charged it literally came into production, a $28,000 camera. And I believe the best it could shoot was 4 megapixels, maybe 5. Yeah, not a lot of people bought that, not even professional photographers, because professional photographers were still using film. They were going back and forth because during that time, in the late 90s, the resolution was not as good as a 35 millimeter film could do. But again, that was in the late 90s. Now, of course, it's completely changed with mirrorless cameras. It's completely different. Wow. Well, here's what Kodak does. 2003, 2005, they get it back. They start using the Easy Share camera. They produce it like crazy, and it's a winner. Now, I had one of these. It's really a pretty good little camera. It became for 2 to 3 years the #1 seller of digital cameras in the world. But they lost money on every one they sold. Remember, I was trying to figure out a question mark, what some of these things are. We had a couple examples. This is probably the best one. It's tremendous market share. It's tremendous growth. And actually did have good market share, but it was losing money. Kodak kind of used the old business model where when you buy a printer or you buy a razor, okay, but we look at the printers, inkjet, or even laser, color laser. Do you make the money on the printer itself, or do you make the money on the refills? That's where Kodak made their money. They gave their little cameras away. You would just buy one because it was so, it was decent and it was a good price. But they knew, we've got you on the film, and that's where their money came from. They used the same business model. So they're trying to give the camera away, and of course costs are very expensive in these late 90s and early aughts. The technology is still rather new, but they priced it to where it would be a big seller, and it was, but they made no money from it. And where are you going to get the extra money here? Yeah, there's no film to sell. Maybe there's the paper, maybe there's other things, but Kodak wasn't making printers during that time. And they weren't doing the paper or the ink. Kind of lost in space here. Kodak Corporation, why not? Why weren't they in printing? Why did they let Hewlett-Packard just be the monopoly for so long in printing? because there's where you make the money on the ink refills. What about 3D printing? That would have been something Kodak could have easily worked on. They had the talent. Photo paper, Adobe, Photoshop. The Adobe Group was founded in 1989, and it was a group of people who were just trying to do editing with a computer, and they were using Macs, of course. Why didn't Kodak just say, you know what, you're ours. We're buying you right now because we see this has got to move in the next 20 years into craziness. Editing, photo sharing, social media. Why weren't they doing that? This was a Tesla of the day. And if you don't stop innovating, if you don't keep looking at your market and where everything is headed, you become a dinosaur. And, what made the dinosaurs really become extinct? Was it a comet hitting the Earth, or was it their behavior? Interesting thought. Now, that's Michael Crichton right there, if you ever read Jurassic World. The behavior, or the Lost World, I would say, of Jurassic, as a second book of the Jurassic Park series. The behavior, we're fine. We don't need any of that. You might not need that this second, but what do you need in 20 years from now? Their original success was based on new technologies. They were a disruptive force, and now they became a fatality. It's a forgotten, bankrupt company. Before I just showed you all those interesting pictures, did you even think of Kodak? Have you thought of Sears? These were two giants, and they owned their market, and it can happen. And just think about disruptive technology. It doesn't care. It doesn't have any sympathy. It takes no prisoners. It just leaves people in ashes. The day Kodak files for bankruptcy, they've almost laid off everyone. This was several years ago. I think somewhere in the 2010s to the 2015, somewhere in that era. They were worth $300 million. A company that was that had a brand value of somewhere around $100 to $200 billion is now chump change. Instagram. There were 5 original employees on Instagram. They were bought just about the same day Kodak went bankrupt. They were bought for $1 billion. So 2012, there's my date. Now, are there only 5 employees at the time at Instagram? Or does everybody work for Instagram? Everyone who takes a picture, everyone who shares a post, who puts their social media out there. Instagram has a lot of free labor, don't they? Kind of interesting as a juxtapose right there. And again, why didn't Kodak buy him? Why didn't Kodak invent this stuff? Is marketing research important? Is this information needed? Yeah, I think so. We need fresh understanding of customers. We change. We are very dynamic. Rarely are we static, my friends. And the mindset, where are we? Basics. This is the basis of creating value and forming a relationship. And of course, we're trying to use it to develop our competitive advantage. Jack Welch, the former CEO of General Electric, said, you know what? If you don't have a competitive advantage, then don't compete. It's just that simple. If there's nothing that you do that's really great, good, outstanding, that sets you apart from somebody else, then do something else, all right? Or you better find one. Information. Oh my gosh. Is that us? Boy, it probably is today. Sitting at home, watching the hundreds of emails that come across your computer, or texts, or chats, or whatever they are, Microsoft Teams, Zoom meetings. Here's something interesting. Only 0.005% of the information collected by business is correctly synthesized, analyzed, and made useful. So this may be some career opportunities right here. Data analytics. And it doesn't have to be as complicated as it sounds, but how can we analyze and synthesize and make use of data? And geographic information systems, again, these are just a couple I'm pointing out here. That is mapping data, and you're mapping data with a database. And we have this program at Tarrant County College. It is at our Trinity River campus, and maybe some of our online connect. And so a few courses in GIS and maybe a data analytics just to get you in the right direction could be very, very positive for your career. Think about this. Well, What does a marketing information system do? Okay, obviously we got to assess our needs, okay, of information. We got to develop it, and we got to generate market and customer insights. We have to do something with it. Okay, now you, an organization, can spend tons and tons of money on this because it can get expensive. We have to base it on what we need, what's feasible to offer, and again, is the information, is it worth the cost that we're doing, or can we find something else cheaper? Have McDonald's and Burger King back in the 1970s and 1980s. It was the fast food industry grew like nothing else. Why? Because we had women going into the workforce. I mean, they became the dominant players in the workforce. So there wasn't a lot of food being eaten. And we were not only that, a lot of home cooking going on, but we became just so much faster and busier that we needed something quick to eat. And that's where fast food just grew. And so McDonald's did amazing amounts of research. And they would figure out in a business area, where's the traffic patterns. If we were going to locate on this down Pipeline Road, let's say, where is the easiest access? All sorts. They put literally millions of dollars into research and several $100,000 into research per each store. So they had the perfect location. So what Burger King did was they've just kind of waited for McDonald's to start digging the hole for their restaurant, and once they put the McDonald's sign up, Burger King would just locate right next to them. Probably not next to them, but at least in the same vicinity down the street. Not to say that Burger King company didn't do their own research, but sometimes, let's see what the leader does, and certainly in retail, where you're a brick and mortar, we can just locate right next to you and let someone else pay for all that amazing work. As we develop an information system, and again, there's not just classes in this, my friends. There are degrees. I believe UTA, University of Texas Arlington, offers a Master's of Science degree in market research. So if you're on the math side, you like numbers and analytics, you kind of like marketing, but you don't think you'll be on the sales or advertising side, this may be a side for you. Research. So how can we get it? Well, where do we start? Here's something novel. Actually, it's not novel at all. It's very old school. Let's see what's free. Do what's free first. You're thinking about starting a side business? Great. What is free? What information is already out there? How can I use that? Because there are private consultants who can charge and will charge you a lot. And not saying it's not worth it, but what's free first? Always look for what's free. So we have internal databases. Okay, that's usually free. There is competitive marketing intelligence. Now we're stepping it up, and there is full-blown market research that we could do. Internal databases. Again, consumer and market information within the company's network. That's where you would start. You're that new department manager, and you need some information. There's got to be a research department. There's got to be information already out there. It's very accessible. It's quick, and which makes it economical. And maybe we've done studies before. The only disadvantage is it may be incomplete. Okay, in 2010. We did the United States Census. If I was using information from that right now, that would not be a very smart idea, because right now, somehow, in 2020, with all the interesting things going on, the census is going on. Every 10 years, we do the most comprehensive research in the United States. And it has a lot to do with politics. It has a lot to do with voting, money, entitlements for each state. So it's very, very important. But there's some great information that the government will pay for, and that we can glean from that. Again, if I was looking through a research report that was aimed at 20-year-olds done in 2015, well, that was a whole different generation. That was the millennials. Now we have Z-sters coming up, the Z generation. So again, could be incomplete, but it's free, and that's where we should start. We can still glean something from that. Okay, there's competitive marketing intelligence. That's internal first. What if we, look out, again, the public information about consumers and products and competitors outside, okay, of our organization, in the marketplace for decision making? Absolutely, absolutely. And we have observing consumers. If I were to put up a coffee shop on one of our campuses at Tarrant County College, I'll say Northeast because that's the campus I teach on, and I was saying, well, you know what, I want to know how much my college students drink coffee, and even the employees here. One thing I could do, I could observe during the breaks of the campus where students are between classes, how many people are carrying a Starbucks, who's carrying Dunkin' Donuts, who's carrying a Roots, who's got a McDonald's cup, who's doing their own brew, and gets a little observation right there. Okay, we can examine our employees. Where else can we observe? We can do internet observations, and as you know, everything is being watched on the internet. And I've talked to a scientist, a former Google scientist, a few years ago, and I said, "Is it really being watched?" And he said, "Come here, man." And he slapped me in the face. He didn't slap me, but he says, "Hey, everything, everything is being watched, and it's deep, deep learning. The more we can find, hey, is it infringing on your rights, or is it just good marketing? Because do you like it? Do you like it when ads pop up on your social media? How many of us have just talked about a product with some friends over the weekend? Hey, I'm thinking about getting this, Starbucks. I'm thinking about grabbing a Coke, and all of a sudden you see that ad pop up on your Instagram or your Facebook or your Twitter. They're listening. It's listening. Again, the advantages of competitive market intelligence, we gain a lot of insights, a lot of purchasing and opinion, especially with some of all those loyalty cards that we have at the Kroger loyalty card. Again, it's going deep algorithms of what you will buy next and what you're most likely to buy. Again, we gain earlier what is our competitor doing, their strengths and weaknesses. Disadvantages may involve ethical issues, of really spying deeply on people. That will be the great argument going forth, probably indefinitely, is how much information, when is it too much? For the marketer, as long as you buy their product, it's that's the end game there. Now, research itself is systematically designing, collecting, and analyzing reported data, which means was what we call very primary. We are literally maybe we have a brand new product going out or service, and it's a specific marketing situation that faces an organization, and so we have a research team that's using the scientific method, basically getting the hypothesis and testing and testing and testing. So we could use our own research. We could hire outside research specialists. Basically, the bigger the company would have their own research departments because it is expensive. Or we could hire a specialist. And again, we could also purchase data if there's something similar by outside firms. But generally, this is very, very primary. As anything, we define the problem and the research objectives in a full-blown market research. We develop the plan, how we're going to collect the information, okay, how we're going to analyze that data, and how will we interpret it, the findings, and hopefully how will we use it. So again, define the problem. We all have problems. What's gone wrong? Are we declining in sales? Are we launching a new product? We got to get more market share. Are customers changing? And all those are extraordinarily important questions. All right. As we define the problem, we could do some exploratory research. All right. Just to figure out what it is. Hey, there's that situation and SWOT analysis. Okay, there's a great place to start right in there that we've got for you. So here we are. We can do causal research as well, which means if we lowered a price, if we raised a price, again, what is going to be the gain by lowering a price? Do we gain enough sales to offset the discount? That's the whole goal, and that's an economic demand right there. Hopefully it'll be linear, which means 10% price reduction should equal an extra 100-fold buys. If I raise the price, do I still have enough profitability afterward? We'll look at that in some pricing as we get into the marketing mix. Types of research in our marketing and information, we have secondary and primary. Remember, secondary is already been done. Okay? It's collected for another purpose, but we can still utilize all that information and put it back into our marketing plan. Internal databases, again, purchased outside, internet search engines, the census. That census, again, let's let the government pay for all different types of demographic information, and then we can jump on that and utilize it. So there it is, the 2020 census. It's cheap, it's collected quickly, it's already been done. You may not get all the data, and it may not be useful. We'll figure that out. But again, my friends, we start with secondary data. What's been done, and is it relevant enough for our problem? And because it's usually very low cost. Now, primary is going to be expensive. Primary is I'm actually going out and I'm doing the research myself, or I'm doing the research that my organization is. So we have surveys, we have experiments. How do we collect it? Well, again, anything online. And when's the last time you actually answered a telephone for a market research? We probably would do it more often if at the very last, now would you like to buy this product? We know it was a con game. It was nothing about research, but it was sale. Mail, telephone, surveys, online surveys as well. The sampling plan, unit, and size. And again, as we see so much that we can literally observe our customers and their purchasing habits, you know that that's the way we're going on that. Again, we have the questionnaires. If we want really good information, we know people buy, but why did they buy? What's the motivation? Now that has to be done by, that has to have some sophisticated questionnaires right in there. Do we like close-ended question? A close-ended question is yes or no. Yes, I did. No, I didn't. Open-ended is why. Why do you like McDonald's? Why do you come back? And again, that's where you get paid well, of how you're going to synthesize that information. And of course, we know all the mechanical instruments, the checkout scanners right there, what you're buying online. Neuromarketing is when you probably look at advertisements and they have you in a room, you've been picked in a focus group, and they're literally looking at your eye movements, because the eyes cannot lie. The pupil dilation can show either stimulation or relaxation. Primary data, again, used by large corporations. New product development, it is expensive. It's very expensive. That's why you got to be huge. Back in the day, now Procter & Gamble's is our largest consumer organization in the United States. Consumables, okay, the stuff that we buy, Tide, all the stuff we buy on a weekly basis. And what they did during these 1980s was, people say they buy it, that's also some of the problem with market research. Oh, my income? Yeah, man, I'm at $250,000 a year. And we always overstate the things that we do. Procter & Gamble really wanted to know. So what they did, and this was possibly, it seemed to be very unethical, but they're big and they got away with it. They had their own garbage trucks. So they basically went in, and how they did it, I don't know, but they did it. They went into some middle class and upper middle class neighborhoods. This was what they believed their target market was. And they collected the trash. And then when they got the trash from just the neighborhoods that they wanted, they emptied it all out. And they had people counting, okay, what is the amount of Procter & Gamble trash that we have? That way we know people have used this product. And they came up with some interesting numbers. I mean, they were thinking 30 or 40% of all of the trash had a Procter & Gamble label on it. So they really knew what their market share was. And they did this for several months at different times for a few years, and then they finally caught enough grief where they stopped it. But they said this was the best way, because hey, you may buy it and put it on your shelf for a year. We want to see, and they track this down for weeks at a time and then months at a time. Well, what's the usage rate? Interesting. There we are. Why don't we just come through my computer, all right, and just make yourself at home. We are tracking everything, not just what you buy, what you say, what you do. So be careful. Be careful with our online. Is incognito really incognito? Man, I hope so. Be careful out there, my friends. And yeah, do you like it? Do you like it when eBay sends you all day long their updates, notifications, or emails? Hey, I think you might like this, or this is close to what you bought. Amazon does the same thing, and I shop both ways. But To me, it seems eBay does a better or a more intensive job of that. And I could get upset until I look at the product. And for me, it's probably a fishing product. And I say, well, oh, okay, ooh, wow, it's on sale now? Well, let me take a look at that. Yeah, they rope you in pretty well, especially when they know not just what you're buying, but what you're just recently viewed. Is it intrusive? Is it a violation? Or is it just great marketing? That way I can say, you know what? I don't have to go look for the products I like. It's sent right to me. I'm not saying it's good or bad either way. I'm saying that is what it is. And is it going away? I don't think so. Again, the listening, the targeting, the social targeting. Yeah, there's the all-seeing eye of the Illuminati right there looking right back at us. Never, ever, ever did a marketer think, back from, let's say, the 1970s, let's say the 80s, let's say the early 90s, maybe even some of the early aughts, that we could be this intimate with our customer, that we could literally talk to them, versus just blowing up a giant TV ad, and we could literally listen and see what they're saying and their purchases as well. So it's an interesting time in marketing information. There are some careers right there for you. If you've ever seen a DoubleClick ad, by the way, that's Google, which is really Alphabet. Alphabet is the parent company of Google, and they have a company with every letter in the alphabet. That's their claim to fame. DoubleClick, they bought this one, and this basically tags every cookie. And this is how, this was the first technology basically that followed you all around. So just because you were on one site, let's say eBay, or you were looking at a trip on hotels.com, and you said, I can't do it, and the same hotel pops up when you're on other various websites throughout the internet, all your searches. It's just tracking everything you do. That is DoubleClick. Sometimes you'll see a DoubleClick warning. It comes so quick. Back in the day, I was deleting them. You had to, go in, look at all your cookies and delete. But it's just it's not a game worth playing, because it's Google now, and it's embedded in everything we do. Why do we put it all together? Again, we put it all together in our customer relationship management. It's CRM. There's just careers and jobs in this. What we're trying to do, we're trying to always create new leads in business. And so you may hear something, lead generation. It's just trying to, hey, with all this information, you might be the perfect person to buy my product. So we're managing those touch points to manage loyalty. And there are different tools that we use, but we're integrating it, we're analyzing, we're trying to apply the results so that perfect ad or whatever can go right to your feed. The marketing environment, that concludes, my friends, this first unit. It is again, painted the very bold brushstrokes. Well, I should say very broad brushstrokes. Maybe they were bold as well. And I hope you have a little better idea now of the environment. I think you can certainly answer those questions that I have for you. Please, please, please go back and watch the video of how to write, format, and submit your projects. Okay, it's got to be in that order that I've said. It's got to be in that formatting that I told you. Those are the grade requirements. Every question must be answered. No, you cannot put a one-sentence answer. You can't put 5 words in a bullet point and say, hey, here it is. It's got to be answered well. All right, I want you to do well. And I hope this helps you learn this fascinating subject of marketing. And as always, I hope you're taking some time out for yourself. Hoping you're enjoying some of the great outdoors. And let's always make it a great day.